So today we are going live to discuss Tasmania's 190 and 491 visa. So if everybody can see me, hear me, can you please put it in the chat box? So we are live on Facebook and also on our YouTube channel. So I would like to wait for a few people to join us and then we can start this session. So this session will go for half an hour. I'll be able to explain the nomination criteria for this financial year for 190 and 491 visa in Tasmania for both onshore and offshore applicants. And then at the end, I'll be able to take some questions as well. So if you are here, can you please put it in the chat box? And if you are, if you can see me and hear me, can you please put it in the chat box? Hi, Jaspreet. Hi, Patrick. Hi, Angelo. Hi, Siddharth. Hi, Nathan. So that's good. Hi, Sukhdev. So looks like you can see me, hear me. Okay, so I'm not sure where you guys are. You're in Australia, you're in Tasmania, or you're overseas, but we will cover all the streams. So again, this session, I would like to focus on Tasmania only. If I will see questions regarding other states, we'll probably cover it in some other live session. But today, I want to just stick to Tasmania only. And this session will go for half an hour. Now, before we look at Tasmania's 190 and 491 requirement, I just want to make sure that you guys do understand that before you start looking for any state nomination criteria, it's very important that you first meet the requirements from the Department of Home Affairs, which are that you need to be under 45 years of age, you need to have competent English unless your skills assessing body requires a higher English. You need to have a skills assessment in the nominated occupation, which is on the department's eligible occupation list. So if you meet all these requirements, then you need to go and look at the state's website to see if you meet their requirements as well. And accordingly, you will apply to that particular state. So first, let's look at Tasmania 190. So for now, another thing with Tasmania is that this state does not go after very high points. So let's say you want their 190, you meet all the requirements, and you only have 60 points of your own, and the state will give you 5 points. That's fine. So you really don't have to compete on points, but what you really have to compete on is their attributes. You know how they have priority attributes, gold, green, and orange. So the more attributes you meet, the quicker you can get the invitation. It really is not like you could have 90 points, but if you're not meeting the attributes, you may have to wait, or for the invitation, or they may not invite you if you're not meeting their minimum nomination criteria. So it's not about the points, it's about the attributes you're meeting in Tasmania. So again, they have mentioned on their website that meeting their minimum nomination requirements, that does not guarantee that you will be offered Tasmanian nomination. Only the most competitive registration of interest will be selected to be invited to apply for nomination. Also, if you're somebody who's already got a 491 from Tasmania, you will not be nominated for 190. So you have to choose very carefully if you want to wait and try for a 190. If you'll become eligible very soon, then you may want to skip the 491. So it's because if you already take a 491, then you won't be eligible for a 190. So that's very important with Tasmania. Now, Tasmania does have a very complicated process, and they do actually have a very lengthy process as well. So it's a 3-step process. You will lodge the EOI, then you will lodge the registration of interest as well. and which is through their gateway, and then they'll give you a pass according to how many priority attributes you meet and what nomination criteria and things like that. And then based on the pass, you will get invited. So if you get a gold pass, then you straight away get invited, you lodge the nomination application. If you get the green, then you wait 4 to 6 months. If you get the orange, then it could be up to 6 months. And then you will, once they invite you for the nomination application, you would lodge the nomination application, you would pay them $300 and plus GST if in Australia to apply for nomination. Now, before you apply for the registration of interest, it's very important that you know that you meet the minimum nomination requirements for your chosen pathway. Now, the priority attributes for each pathway, they are not required. Like, let's say you meet the minimum nomination requirements, but then when you look at the priority attributes, you think, okay, you actually don't meet any, you don't have any attribute. That's fine, you can still apply as long as you meet the minimum nomination requirement. But because you're not meeting any attributes, it may take longer for you to get the invitation. So the more of the attributes you have, the better your chances of nomination and the sooner you may be invited to apply for nomination. Now for 190, they have 4 pathways. So I think last year they introduced the Tasmanian established resident pathway. They'd never had this before. So the 4 pathways they have for this year are Tasmanian skilled employment pathway. The second one is Tasmanian skilled graduate pathway. The third one is Tasmanian established resident pathway. And the fourth one, which they have introduced, is the overseas applicant health sector job offer pathway. Now, if you look at the first one, they've always had this pathway, like if your occupation is on the TOSOL, 6 months work experience, you can apply. But this year, what they have done is they have given you a second option as well. So let's say your occupation is not on the TOSOL, but your occupation is on the, the 190 occupation list, and you want to try for 190 under this pathway, but your occupation is not on the TOSOL, but you have been working in your nominated occupation for last 15 months, then you can apply. But important thing to note here is that you do, so these occupations on TOSOL, they have caveats. So let's say your occupation is on the TOSOL, then you do have to meet the caveats as well. So the caveat could be that the employer has been operating there 3 years, or you have, more than 12 months work experience and things like that in Tasmania. So each occupation has different caveats. So you do have to meet that as well. So that's for the 190. Now they do accept 20 hours work as well. So that's fine if you're not working full time, but you've been working from last 6 months, 20 hours a week prior to lodging your application. That's fine. So you can apply for a 190. So that's also a change that they did last year. Before last year, they always wanted applicants to have full-time jobs. Okay, I can see some questions in the chat box, but like I said, you can keep asking those questions, but I would probably reply to them at the end of this session. So the second pathway is the Tasmanian skilled graduate pathway. So of course, you must have completed 2 years course, registered for 92 weeks, 2 calendar years. And the important thing is that you need to be living in Tasmania while you were studying this course. So if it was like an online study or something, that will not be considered. Also, your study has to be a minimum of a diploma, unless let's say you were doing a trade qualification and you did a certificate 3, and your occupation is in group 3 or group 4, which happens in most trade qualifications, then it's fine. Also, if you're a Tasmanian PhD candidate who have not completed an undergraduate degree in Tasmania, you are eligible in this pathway after living in Tasmania and completing at least 2 years of their PhD discipline in Tasmania. So this is something they have added this year. This was not the case until last year. Now, the third nomination pathway is the Tasmanian established resident pathway. So you must be living in Tasmania for at least 3 years for this one. Now, very important thing to note here is, let's say you have been in Australia from last 6 years. 3 years out of this, you were living in Tasmania, so that's fine, which is 50%. But let's say you have been in Australia for 8 years, and you have been in Tasmania from last 3 years, but then you were a different state for 5 years. So the requirement is that you must have been living in Tasmania for at least 3 years with no more than 50% of your total Australian residence period spent in another Australian state or territory. So that's something you'll have to check. So if you're not exactly meeting this requirement, then you may have to go back and see their other pathways and see if you meet any of the other pathway requirements. Now, you also need to be employed in Tasmania. If you're employed skill level 1, 2, 3, then you need to be working in a skill level 1 to 3 occupation for a total of 12 months out of the last 24 months. So it's like cumulative. So let's say you worked 6 months, then you had a 3 months gap, and then you worked another 6 months. That's fine. And a minimum of 20 hours per week is also fine. But if you're, let's say, if you're working in a skill level 4 or 5 position, then you need to have 18 months work experience. Again, cumulative, 18 months in the last 3 years, and again, 20 hours per week is fine. You could have also operated a business for at least the last 2 years with taxable earnings equivalent to temporary skilled migration income threshold, which is currently, as you know, it has been changed to 70,000 recently. So they have a fourth pathway now, which is the Overseas Applicant Health Sector Job Offer Pathway. And like the title says, you are overseas applicant and you have a skills assessment in a health or elite health skills assessment. And they have also given the occupations, so they're very specific with this. This pathway does have its own occupation list. So you need to have that, and you must have received a formal job offer for a job that is based in Tasmania, which is closely related to your nominated occupation. The other condition is that you or any of your dependents must not have lived in another Australian state or territory within the last 12 months. And your employer must have a well established business which has been operating for at least 12 months. And of course, your wages and conditions must be same as an Australian citizen or permanent resident, and this should be a genuine position. So those are the four pathways for 190, and I think we can look at the 491 as well, and then I can take some questions. Now with the 491, as you know, it's a regional provisional visa. You get this visa granted for 5 years, and after 3 years, you apply for the 191. Again, because it's a points tested visa, you need to have a minimum of 65 points, including state points, positive skills assessment in your nominated occupation, under 45 years of age, and you also need to have competent English unless your skills assessing body requires a higher level of English. Now, with 491, again, the same rules apply. Just meeting the minimum nomination criteria does not mean that you will get the invitation. Of course, the more priority attributes you can meet, the quicker it will be for you to get the invitation. Now, each pathway, doesn't matter 190, 491, has got their own priority attributes. So when you will lodge your registration of interest, and when you go to the gateway, you put everything in there, it will tell you which pass you're getting. So the pass depends on what attributes you're meeting. So just make sure that you're putting all the correct information when you're lodging your ROI. And there are also a few documents that you attach at the ROI stage as well. So for 491 as well, EOI, ROI, and then the nomination application. But for the overseas applicant, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit, you get basically they invite you from your EOI. So they invite you and then you lodge the registration of interest. A little bit different for overseas applicants trying for a 491. So 491 has 6 pathways. The first 3 are same as 190, which is the skilled employment pathway, skilled graduate pathway, established resident pathway. But they have 3 more for 491, which is the business operator pathway, the overseas applicant job offer pathway, and the overseas applicant OSOP, which is the overseas skilled occupation list. They have a separate list for overseas applicants, invitation only pathway. So like I said, for this pathway, you would only lodge the EOI. Now, the skilled employment pathway, again, they want you to be working there for a period of 6 months. But if you have a skills assessment and related employment in an occupation listed on the TOSOL, then you may be eligible for nomination after 3 months of employment. And also what they have added is that subcontractors can also apply, but they need to have a related skills assessment and at least 12 months business activity in Tasmania for a 491. Now for 491, if you're working in a skill level 4 or 5, you could be eligible, but then there are some extra requirements for that one, that, working in Tasmania for at least 12 months, 20 hours a week, and you must be currently living in Tasmania and intend to continue living in Tasmania. Your dependents must not be living in another Australian state or territory. So there are some extra requirements when it comes to the employment, like, you have to prove that there is a genuine and demonstrated severe labor recruitment difficulty for the role, and you have been endorsed by your employer in a statement detailing the need of the position. Local recruitment and workforce development activities and strategies are in place that have attempted to address that recruitment difficulty. And you must have relevant qualifications or experience consistent with the ENSCO definition for that role. They also want to see that there is an opportunity for career advancement endorsed in writing by your employer. Now, please note that some occupations have caveats, and to qualify for gold or green priority attributes, employment must be skilled and score 1 to 3 and meet the caveats. So the employment that does not meet these caveats can be claimed as semi-skilled, which is NSCO 4 to 5 for orange attributes. So what it means is, even if you don't meet the caveats, that's fine, but you will be given an orange pass. So the next one is the Tasmanian Skilled Graduate Pathway. So you must have completed a course of study and obtained a letter of completion from a tertiary institution in Tasmania. And the study must be for 1 year, and you must have lived in the state for that 1 year. Again, the course has to be a QF5, which is a diploma or higher, or at least certificate 3 related to an ANSCO major group 3 or group 4 occupation. The course must be full-time and on-site in Tasmania. The third one, which is the Tasmanian Established Resident Pathway. So you must have been living in Tasmania for at least 2 years for that one. Again, with no more than 50% of total Australian residence period spent in another Australian state or territory, and currently be employed in Tasmania. So it could be in either a role which is skill level 1 to 3, and the cumulative work experience that you've got is 6 months, and at the same level in the last 12 months. So a minimum 20 hours per week, or if you're working in skill level 4 or 5, then you need cumulative 12 months experience in the last 18 months. So either one, skill level 1 to 3 for 6 months in the last 12 months, or cumulative 12 months in the last 18 months if it's a skill level 4 or 5 for this pathway. The next pathway is the business operator pathway. So of course you need to be running the business for at least 12 months. The only partner you could have the business is your spouse. So it could be either just yourself, and if you have a spouse, then spouse can also be the co-owner of the business. And your personal taxable income, so of the primary applicant, needs to be at least 85% of the TSMIT, which is 59,500. So that is the requirement for that one. Okay, also you have to show that you have an understanding of the responsibilities and requirements around treating employees fairly by completing key units on the Fair Work Ombudsman's online learning center. Owners of massage therapy businesses must have a related skills assessment and a verifiable health fund provider number. Subcontracting business owners are not eligible for consideration in this pathway. So if you're a subcontractor, then you may want to look at the 190 or 491, because they have added the subcontractors in that one now. The fifth nomination pathway, which is the overseas applicant job offer pathway. Now, again, as the name suggests, is for the overseas applicant who have a job offer. All occupations are eligible for this one. So of course you need a job offer letter. For this one, the employer must have a well-established business that has been operating in Tasmania from last 12 months. Your wages and conditions are no less favorable than those that would apply to an Australian citizen or permanent resident. There must be a genuine and ongoing need for your position. Massage therapist positions must be located in a hospital, aged or disability care setting, or an elite healthcare setting such as physiotherapy clinic. Now, to meet the gold priority for this one, the gold attribute for this one, you do need a job offer letter from a well-established Tasmanian business directly relating to your skills assessment. The last nomination pathway is the overseas applicant OSOP invitation only pathway. So there is a separate occupation list for overseas applicants. So if your occupation is on the OSOP list, then I would highly recommend that you apply for expression of interest. And if Tasmania likes your expression of interest, they will send you an invitation through Skill Select and they will invite you to lodge the registration of interest. There are a lot more requirements when they will ask you to lodge the registration of interest. For example, you must provide evidence of research into Tasmanian job market and you must have access to sufficient financial assets to fund your migration and settlement in Tasmania for at least 6 months. You will also have to provide personal research into recent advertised positions relevant to your nominated occupation. You will also need to provide an employment statement for each advertisement explaining how your qualifications, knowledge, and experience relates to and meet the requirements for each of the job advertisements. Now, there is a gold attribute for this one, which is that you must be invited through Skill Select by Migration Tasmania to register interest on the Migration Tasmania website. So these were the 6 streams for the 491 visa, and 190 visa has got the 4 streams. So Tasmania does, like I said, it does have a bit complicated process. So just make sure that you do use professional help if you're trying to apply for a nomination with Tasmania. Okay, so I'll be taking some questions now. 80 points, 190, civil engineer from offshore. Both husband and wife have skill assessed as civil engineer from EA. Do we need job offer too? Okay, I think you can only go for a 491. I don't think 190 is an option for you because your occupation is not on that, because that's only for health and elite occupations. They are offering 190. They are only offering 491 for overseas applicants unless, like I said, it's a health occupation. 34 years old and I've done masters in economics and bachelor's of education and been teaching from last 8 years. Any criteria for PR pathway in Tasmania? So I'm not sure if you're onshore or offshore. So when you ask me any questions, if you have a skills assessment, please mention it. So if you don't have a skills assessment yet, then probably the first thing to do will be to get a skills assessment. And then depending if you're onshore or offshore, we can look for options for you. I'm studying automotive technology in Sydney, but I plan to move either in SA or Tasmania. I have planned to study at least another 92 weeks to be able to achieve 5 points on regional study criteria. Which state should I choose really in terms of PR? To be honest, like, because your occupation is motor mechanic and Sydney has been really good for that occupation. If not Sydney, like regional New South Wales has been good for that occupation as well. If you have to choose between SA or Tasmania, I would probably go for SA if I have to pick one, just because they are very quick and things like that. With Tasmania, you have to meet that additional attributes and things like that. With SA as well, they would invite you with minimum of 65 points as long as you meet their requirements, which is usually 6 to 12 months of work experience. And in your case, you have to do a 12 months work experience anyway to get a positive skills assessment. But in your case, let's wait what happens with New South Wales. If you are already halfway through your study, then I don't know why you want to study another 2 years just for 5 points. 5 points you could get through NATI or working a little bit harder on your English as well. So yeah, you may want to get one-on-one advice as well on this situation. Okay, 85 points including state points, computer network engineer, EY lodged from offshore. Okay, South Australia 491. They have not released the new criteria. They have not released their occupation list as well. So probably wait, but if your occupation is open, you do have good chances. But then again, with South Australia, when they're inviting from offshore, they look at your work experience as well. Okay, with the processing times, probably I will not take questions regarding processing times. You can actually check on the department's website with the processing times, and also it gets updated every month. Okay, is there any chance engineering technologist offshore applicant? Let's have a look. So engineering technologist is open for offshore invitation only pathway. So unless you can get a job offer, then also you can try for a 491. Otherwise, you can try for, you can just lodge the expression of interest. And if they like your expression of interest, they could invite you for the, they could invite you for the 491 registration of interest. Okay, special education teacher in Delhi government school. Can I apply for 190? So for 190 in Tasmania, let's see if teachers are on their 190 list, but you still need a job offer letter. So for the 190 list, they only have the health occupations. So you could try for a 491, but again, like you first need a skills assessment for that one. Fatima is asking, is Tasmania open for offshore applicants for engineering technologists? Yes, they are. We have actually received some invitations for offshore applicants already. I think they sent a big invitation round a couple of months ago. So this financial year. So if you've not lodged your expression of interest with Tasmania or you need any help with getting nomination from Tasmania, you can get in touch with us. Okay, Angelo is asking, please send the link for Tasmania. You can actually Google that Tasmania nomination, but I will actually reply to your comment a bit later. I'll put the link as well. Civil engineer 70 for 189. Is there any chance? Let's see. But civil engineer, as you know, is a very competitive occupation and looks like you are offshore, and a lot of people are trying from offshore for engineering occupations. So, yeah, your points are not that great. But have you tried nomination with the states? Like, how Tasmania is open, ACT is also open. ACT is also sending invites for offshore applicants recently. So Tasmania and ACT, they are both sending invitations for offshore applicants. If you do not mind a 491, probably I would focus on these two states for now until the other states open. When can we expect New South Wales 190 invitation round? Uh, we are waiting, so it could happen anytime. So as you know, all states are waiting for their quota. So for example, like, to be honest, even with Tasmania and ACT, even though they are sending the pre-invitations, they are approving the nomination applications, but they are not sending the full invitations because even they are waiting for the full quota. So we are hoping, looking at the trend last couple of years, we are hoping sometime this month we will hear from all states. Oliver, need English requirements when applying for 491. Yes, so you do need competent English, minimum of 65 points, including the state points. For 491, the state will give you 15 points. You also need a positive skills assessment and you need to be under 45 years of age. So these are the basic requirements before you start looking for a 491 visa. Umair is asking software engineer offshore having assessment equivalent to 5 years. That's good. So 70 points for 190, 80 for 491. You're trying for WA, but you're open to other states as well. So software engineer, let me have a look. Now, because today we are only discussing Tasmania, so software engineers are open and they do require 2 to 5 years of experience. You meet that criteria as well from Tasmania. So I think you should lodge an expression of interest with Tasmania as well. Like you never know, you could, it has happened so many times with our clients. They get invited from sometimes from more than one state, which is okay. Like you could, go ahead with the nomination application with one state that you prefer, but it's always good to try with all states. Like when we handle applications from overseas applicants, we try all states and we kind of put on the table whatever is available. Then it's the client's choice to pick whichever options are available. So some clients, they may want to wait until, they may want to utilize the time frame that has been given to lodge their nomination application and wait for another invitation from another state. But at least if you are trying with all states, then you know that something will come up. Patrick is asking, what are the changes we should expect from SA 2023-24 state nomination? I'm currently working in outer regional SA for more than 6 months in an occupation not related to my skills assessment. So, Patrick, I think you will be fine. The webinar they conducted recently for migration agents, they said there won't be much changes. So, in your case, you should be eligible to apply as soon as they open. So, if you need any help with this, you can get in touch with us. Teddy is asking, currently living in Melbourne with positive software engineer skills assessment, 80 points for 491, including state points. Now wanting to move to Tasmania. How long I have to reside in Tasmania? So, Teddy, to be honest, I would wait in Victoria first. Let's see what their requirements are. Because even over there, they really don't want you to be working in your nominated occupation. But then, of course, they check few other things and the criteria is not very clear. But let's see what comes up in Victoria. So, don't make a decision moving out from your state until you have seen your own state's requirements. You don't want to move to Tasmania and then to figure out that everybody with your profile got invited and you're still waiting in Tasmania, because in Tasmania you'll have to wait a minimum of 6 months. And then, first you have to live, work there for 6 months. Then you would apply, then you would get a pass, depending on the color of the pass. You will get invited. So we are not talking about 6 months then, we are talking about 9 to 10 months in Tasmania. So if, Victoria opens and they have a better criteria, you may want to hang around there for a bit and, see if they will invite you. I've studied Diploma of Community Services in TASTAFE and have been living in Tasmania for 3 years now. Yes, there is a hope for you, but do you have a skills assessment? Because I'm not sure if this community services course that you have done is accredited and if you're able to get skills assessment. I think it was. I just want to quickly check. So if you've got a skills assessment, I don't know what you're waiting for because you should be applying already. Just double checking this course. Yeah, it doesn't come up. So I'm guessing that you might be struggling to get a skills assessment because you do need 1 year work experience as a community worker. Maybe get in touch with us if you have work experience and we'll see what we can do. But unless and until you don't have a skills assessment, it's not Tasmania, but you won't get invitation from any state. So it's just not about Tasmania because, like I said, skills assessment is the basic requirement for these visas. Okay, nutritionist, Tasmanian Victoria. Okay, 491 with 70 points. Your points are a bit low, but you never know because your occupation is good. Let's see if Tasmania would invite you. Victoria is usually more competitive, but also keep an eye on other states. So if your occupation is open in other states, make sure that you apply there as well. Okay, I always get this one. Ramya is asking, under university lecturer, we have chosen all states. Is it okay, or do we need to select particular province to get invitation? Yes. So if you put all states, basically nobody will pick you because you've put all states. They won't even see it. So most states they don't pick EOIs which mentions any state. States would usually filter EOIs which mentions their own state. So again, it's not always about just lodging EOI because some states they want you to do registration of interest as well. So it's very important that you understand the requirements criteria for each state before you apply with them. So if you have put all states, basically it will never get picked up. I've only seen once South Australia picking up EUIs with all states because they had like too many seats to fill, but usually no states will pick up EUIs with any state. Quantity surveyor, 70 points, 189. Very competitive occupation, just like engineers. 70 points are a bit low, I would say. Maybe try with states. If you're okay with the 491, try with states. Okay, AV Rajput as a offshore, if I invited by a state for one occupation, then somehow state removed same occupation from their list before I get visa, will it affect me granting a visa? If yes, how? No, it won't affect you. So it doesn't matter because states keep changing the occupation list all the time. So New South Wales changed, not changed, like they added so many occupations like time to time. But states usually will come up with a new occupation list every year, and sometimes the visas take like more than 1 year to grant. So no issues with that one. Shalika, I'm a chef in Victoria, 65 points, skills assessment. Is it better to move to Tasmania? No, so we had a similar question before. I would hang around in your state first to see what happens. And then, because if you go to like there are better states than Tasmania. Why would you go to Tasmania, wait there 6 months, and then another 2 to 3 months to get the full invitation? So Tasmania nomination is good for people who are already there or people from overseas. But I wouldn't really move from any other state to Tasmania. I can move you to a better state and get you the nomination quicker than Tasmania. So if you want to move, if Victoria is not looking good, if you want to move, maybe get in touch with me and we will look at some better states. Okay, just breathe. 80 points, including state points, living in Victoria regional but not working anywhere. Human resource advisor. Okay. Did not see many invites for that occupation, but I'm really hoping that Victoria will focus on other occupations this year because last year, to be honest, some of our clients did miss out because they were like focusing on engineers, IT, critical occupations, teachers, and they kind of ignored all the other professional occupations. But I hope it won't be the case this year and you will have chances to get invitation. But of course if you can get a job then it's much better for you. But let's say if nothing happens next 2 to 3 months, we can look at another state for you. Jinal is asking, can we still apply priority wet assess skills assessment, or it's just for some? Okay. Yes, so they have changed the criteria. You could apply for priority assessment, let's say if your visa is expiring or if you are very soon losing points for your age and things like that. But yeah, but like if let's say if they still have, let's say they have given these priority seats to all these applicants whose visa are expiring, losing age points very soon, so they want a skills assessment quickly so that they don't miss out on the invitation. Once they have given the priority spots to these people, then they will look at normal applications as well. So it's worth a try. I'll probably take one more question now. Just want to stick to something with Tasmania. Okay, what are the chances for 190, as I have lodged my EOI in May, graduated MPA from Tasmania Private College, Hobart, 65 points, only working in aged care since 1.5 years. So again, looks like you have done 2 years of study, but you have only lodged your EOI. Why you haven't lodged your ROI? You'll have to see how many priority attributes you are meeting. But in your case, yeah, we can try for a 190 under the graduate pathway. We'll have to check, what other attributes you're meeting. But again, just lodging the EOI will actually not do anything. So you'll have to do the ROI as well. So if you need help with this, you may get in touch with us. Okay, so this, I would like to just wind up the session now. So thank you everybody for joining us for Tasmania session. So we will probably put some videos out on our YouTube channel as well regarding Tasmania's 190 and 491 criteria in detail. In the meantime, if you do want to get in touch with us, you can jump onto our website, nationwidemigration.com.au, and book an online consultation from there. Good luck to everyone.